Meet Advocate Capital client Jonathan Stark of the Daniel Stark Law Firm in Bryan, Texas. Jonathan, if you would please maybe think in terms of your experience from the financial perspective before you became an Advocate Capital customer and what that's meant to your firm since you've been an Advocate Capital customer, kind of a before and after.
Sure. Advocate Capital has been a critical component of our continued success. You and I were talking real briefly before we started recording about how long has it been since Daniel Stark and Advocate Capital have been partners in keeping our clients from getting screwed by big insurance companies. And I can't even remember. I know at least 15 years. I can remember the early days of being a law firm. And I personally was the one responsible for writing checks for the case expenses that we needed to incur to represent the folks that had entrusted us with their case. And I can remember those early days in a law firm of having to balance the need to hire an expert in a case with the need to make payroll. I think every law firm story, if we're honest as law firm owners, every law firm story involves those hard financial decisions. And it wasn't that we didn't ultimately hire those experts. We did. But sometimes a case might drag out a little longer than absolutely critical because the lawyer was having to make these kinds of financial decisions. Partnering with Advocate Capital has removed that consideration altogether. I don't know the exact amount of expenses that we have out on the street now, but I know it's a really, really big number. We have a couple of thousand open cases. And to know that any of the 25 to 30 lawyers in my law firm right now can hire an expert on any case that they deem appropriate, and to know that we have the backing of Advocate Capital to immediately fund those expenses, it's just a key part of us being able to do what we do here at Daniel Stark for our clients. And I know there's a lot of law firm owners out there that might say, we don't need the money. And that's great because Advocate Capital at the end of the day is a bank, and banks don't love loaning money to people that need it. So it's good that you're doing well. But I can just tell you that when you 100% remove any financial barrier to being able to zealously represent your clients through incurring case expenses like experts, it will make a difference in the ultimate value of the cases. It will make a difference in the ultimate outcome that your clients experience. And for us, again, it's kind of like we talked about a little earlier with one of the processes here, FSB. I can't imagine going back to a day when we don't review cases for valuation decisions as a committee. Similarly, I can't imagine going back to a day in which we are not partnered with Advocate Capital. It's just been a huge part of our success. So thank you for that.
Fantastic. Thank you. And it's been a wonderful partnership. And you mentioned a couple things. I want to just ask a couple follow-up questions. And so, as business owners, and, law firms are businesses that just happen to be in the business of practicing law. And so for attorneys who self-fund their cases, what has that experience been like for you and Danny, not having to use all your after-tax cash to continue funding the cases and giving every one of your clients an interest-free loan? I mean, at some point, the owners of the law firm need to prepare for their retirement as well. Would you talk about that for a moment?
Sure. Again, it's been at least 15 years. So I have a hard time even remembering what it was like to have all of my and Danny's after-tax profit invested right back into case expenses. Case expenses are critical. They're a critical component of us representing our clients, but they don't necessarily lead to law firm growth. We need to invest in things like marketing. We need to invest in our people through appropriate compensation or being able to add people to your team. And so there is at some point, no matter how well a lawyer may believe they're doing, there is at some point a need to take the money that you don't have to invest in case expenses, because there is an option like Advocate Capital, and use that to invest in either your financial future or just the growth of the firm. What we do is a good and noble thing. So why not try to do that for more people? And by using Advocate Capital, we've been able to reinvest what used to be case expenses into marketing and team growth. It is a It is a really, really big deal. In fact, I believe it to be a competitive advantage. And so, yeah, law firms ultimately are businesses who provide law services. That's what we sell. And frankly, if you're a lawyer and you're doing that and you're not leveraging a partner like Advocate Capital to come alongside and fund those case expenses, I mean, I think at the end of the day, it's an irresponsible business decision that does put you at a competitive disadvantage.
Now, you've mentioned the word competitive advantage and those types of things. Something else that we hear from time to time when we're speaking with new law firms or prospective new law firms are lawyers who have concerns that their clients might object to the pass-through of interest as a case expense on their settlement disbursement summary. If you would describe what that experience has been like at Daniel Stark and how your clients have perceived that.
Sure. So like so many, Danny and I, we shared those reservations initially when we began exploring partnering with Advocate Capital. And frankly, it wasn't until we just decided that one, we had to take the risk and find out. We could not suffer the competitive disadvantage of self-funding our case expenses without at least knowing that that was a problem. Right? So I think a lot of lawyers fear that clients will object. But we decided we're going to put that to the test and find out. And Donna, frankly, it was a non-issue. I think the reality of the situation is that clients expect that there are going to be case expenses incurred. It's something that's talked about in every new client contract. And so do they expect the lawyers to fund all of those for free? No, I think that's a fear and an expectation that we law firm owners just imagined. And so have we ever had a client complaint? Maybe. But in the 15 years that we've been partnered with Advocate Capital, we're talking about tens of thousands of disbursements. And I honestly I can't think of a single objection that a client has ever had. And I will tell you, if there was one, then our policy probably would have been to just waive the interest in that case, because it makes such a difference for our ability to represent all of our clients, that if once in a blue moon there was an objection, you just deal with it. But frankly, I think it's a non-issue. I think it's an imagined fear that we use that just doesn't need to be there.
I think it's like so many things, when you have a meaningful conversation with your client on the front end and explain, hey, we're going to be able to go toe to toe with this insurance company. We have virtual unlimited access to capital and you're going to share the expense. But the good news is we're going to front it for you and you just pay it at the end. I mean, is that generally what your conversation sounds like?
I think if somebody were to ask, we would have that conversation. But again, I think altogether, I think this is really just a non-issue. We make sure clients understand that we have the resources that we need to fight against an insurance company. You talk about virtually endless capital. Mm-hmm. I mean, really and truly, if a lawyer thinks that they're going to be able to go up and they're going to be able to go toe to toe from a capital expenditure standpoint with an insurance company, they're hallucinating. It's not reality. Right. And so to be able to tell a client, we have the backing to ensure that we have the money needed to fight for your case, I think is a comforting thing to clients. It's not an impediment to signing up their case. It's a benefit that we, by virtue of our partnership with Advocate Capital, have that other law firms in our markets might not have. And so I'm not going to pretend like this is an active part of every conversation we have with a new client. It's not. But if a question ever arises at the contracting, because in our contract, we do specifically state that we use an outsourced funding company and that there is interest charged. In the rare instances that it comes up, it's addressed exactly as you described, and it, again, becomes a non-issue.
Fantastic. Well, thank you for joining us today and for sharing your Advocate Capital experience. We so appreciate having Daniel Stark as a customer. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Appreciate you.